Strings are really the important part in the Python, as most of the time you are going to deal up with the strings. So hello everyone and welcome to the movie where we are going to talk about the strings. And in fact, if you notice closely, you are dealing most of the time with the strings. Yes, computer is all about zeros and ones and the numbers, but still we deal up quite a lot with the strings. Your account name is a string, your address is a string, and sometimes your phone number or your mobile number is also being stored as a string. Now let us try to handle how the strings works in the Python. Just to save a couple of time, I have already declared string 1 and string 2, and let me just show you the difference. That let's say we are having a string 3 and I name it as simply A. Now string 1 is a string 2 is a string, but string 3, that is str3, is a character. Just to differentiate them, I have mentioned that in a single quote. Again, string is a set of characters, but a character is a single character, and we all know about that. We are quite familiar with the English, and otherwise why you have been in the course, you would have been in a Chinese Python version of the course. But let's just get back from the jokes and let's try to have some printing, because printing will give us a much more better idea how the strings are accessible. Of course, I could have done str1, that is going to print the string, but that doesn't make sense. Let's try to have an operation on the string. Let's say I want to access only the H word from the string 1, that is hello world. How I can do that? Just open up a square bracket. Now this is not a square, this is a square bracket. In the IDE, it looks like a rectangle, but it's a bracket. Okay. Now how I can access the first element is just by putting a 0 out here. Strings are indexed from the 0, so the H element is 0, E is 1, L is 2, and so on and so forth. So if you want to access the simple first element, the H, I can hit the run button and the H is being printed. Here is my super impressive video on the strings just printing out an H. Yes, that doesn't impress a lot, but what I can do apart from that might little bit impress you. Let's say I want to slice up the string. Now this is going to be a pretty common operation and quite a lot you are going to see that. I'm writing 2:5. Now what is happening? I'm actually telling the string to slice up this entire str1 from 2 to 5. Now 2 is 1, this is 0, 1 and 2. So 2 is L, but 2, 3, 4 and 5 is O. Now notice something strange. When I run this output, this is LLO, but we counted 0, 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 5. And in fact, if I make it 7, this would make much more visible sense. Let me just show you what I mean by that. Now 7, just count out the 7. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So 7 is O, but why the O is not being printed? Simply because range are not exclusive to the last character, and that you should always take care. Now, how do I know that? I looked up in the documentation, as simple as it sounds. Yes, again, documentation is not your cup of tea at this point of moment, but don't worry. Now, we have done that. Now, let me just try to have that on to simply 6. Now, let me save that and run that. Now, only H. There is no H, there is no E, only L, L and O. Also, there is a space. Notice when I highlight it, the space is also inclusive out there. Now, let me just copy this and make sure that you understand a couple of things about slicing up the string. Now, there are a couple of ways to slice up the string. Let me just save that and run this. And again, the first part of the string is now sliced up. Likewise, I can also make sure that the reverse is also the condition and the hello is only being printed. So that's also the case. Now also you can multiply the strings as well. Let's say if I have str1 and I want to print it, let's say 7 times. So I can also do that. If I save this and run that again, the hello world is being printed for the 7th time. Again, looks scary, but this is how it is. Now also you can add up any strings and all of these things. You can work out for that as well. But let's talk about something important, how to update a string on the go. So I'll say print and I'll say updated string. And I just want to do something a little bit awkward. Now what I want to do, I want to have a string 1. I want to slice it up string 1 and in place of hello world, I want to write hello planet. How can I do that? First of all, I need to slice my string up. I have already done that on the line number simply 7. So what I can do that, or in fact line number 8, I can simply say colon and a 6. Now notice why I'm writing a 6, because I need that space after the hello. It's important in this case. And I'll add a plus and I'll say simply something like this, planet. Let me save that and run this. So now my updated string is hello planet. Okay, not very super impressive again, but this is how we do the things. Now let me talk about one more thing about the strings, which is a format specifiers or format operation. Let me write down a comment for you. So I have to say formatting of strings. Now you will also see quite a lot of syntax that says something like this, that says your name is, and then people like to put a %s. Now if you're coming from the language like C, you might have already guessed that, but for rest of the people, let me just say that, and your account ID is, and I would like to put a %d in that case. I'll talk about that in just a moment, bear with me. And I have to put a % after this and put a bracket out there, or simply parenthesis, and I would say Kevin, and after that I would give a number. Let's say 14456 is the account number, any random number. So I'll run this and notice what happened. In the place of %s, it is picking up the data from this person and pair of parentheses, which is the first one, the Kevin, and in place of the %d, it is picking up the data from here. Now this is known as the format specifier. It is pretty common, but how do I know what are the %s, %d, and how I can use them? Now whenever you are going to use a specific data type, like in this case I'm trying to replace this with a string, I need to make sure that I spell out the correct character, that is %s for the string, %d for the integer. We have others as well, like %c for the character, %f for the floating point number, and yes, there are dozens of others, like there is a %e for exponential notation, there is a %g for the shorter f, and there is a %o for octal integer, but that are not super important. The only important part is %c, %s, %d, and %f, which you are going to see quite a lot in your code. Now coming back on to the again very important topic is the simple escape notations. Let me just hit a comment out here and I'll call them as escape notation. Yes, it is tough to type and talk at the same time, but I'm trying to get rid of this. Now let's come back to the escape character, and you might have already seen one. Let me just say this is, and I put a \n, a line. Save that and run this and notice what happened. This is then a line break and a line. Now this is because of the /n. Now there are some special characters which are having a special meaning in the string. Like I said /n, that means insert a new line in my string. Now this is important, and there are dozens of other, but I'll just make sure that you understand what are the basic one. There is a /b for the backspace. There is a /r for the carriage return, which can be used in place of /n as well, but /n is pretty common. There is a /t for the horizontal tab. There is a /v for the vertical tab, and that's it. There are others. Yes, there are others, but these are the important one that you need to be take care. Okay, so far so good. We have done that. Yes, there are other things like there is a in, there is a not in. You can check for the strings whether particular value is or particular character is present in that, but we will take care of that later on in the example. Now one more interesting thing that I would like to talk about is this. Let's say I want to print a string, and what I can say here is you can use the triple quotes. Again, triple double quotes are also allowed. They means really the same, and this is being used by simply whatever the type or formatting you want to give the string, just give it exactly the same. It will print exactly the same. Let me show you what I mean by that. I simply said this is a multi-line string, and I put a /t just to give an example, and I will say which is going to be printed as it is. Okay, I need to end up with the triple double quotes, and that's it. When I run this simple line of code, you can see at the bottom, this is then a line break, so is a multi-line comment, and everything is getting. Now after the string, there is a line gap, which is due to /t. Now this is quite a common, and this is the trick which we were using for printing out the multi-line comments, because it generates no code if you don't put a print out there. Now, one more important thing, let's say I want to print a path of my string. Let me just say something like this: C:/ and sum / and again none. Now sum and none doesn't make sense, but if I want to run this command, you can notice that if I say C:/ sum / none, but this is not I wanted to print, although that's a valid path, but still I want to have double slash in my string for no God's sake reason, but yes, I want to do that. So how can I do that? Now you can do that simply by putting a simple R out just before starting off your string. Now notice when I run that, it says double slash and double slash. Now what does this R means? This R is simply an expression that says treat my string as a raw input or raw string. Again, an important tip that you should always take care. I would also write a comment and I will say raw string so that you can take a note of that. I'll move to the next line and I'll talk about one more thing. Now there is, just like the raw string, there is a concept of Unicode string. Let me first show you what does that mean. But after that, I'll discuss a couple of things for that. I simply say U and I put a quote, and you can also put a double quote as well, nothing to be worried. I say hello world, and that's it. If I save that and run that, notice it says hello world, nothing is much visible difference. But what is Unicode strings? Normally strings in Python are stored internally as 8-bit ASCII, but Unicode strings are stored as a 16-bit Unicode. Now this allows you to have multiple characters from the special languages like the Chinese, or maybe some dollar characters, or pretty much anything. If you want to have a special Unicode character, you want to have your string as trailing U in place of that, or prefixed U. Okay, so far so good. Now coming back onto the starting example, that is string 1, string 2. In the Python, strings are also being built up with lots of functions inbuilt, which we'll talk later on. The video is getting too much long, but I can give you a special idea for that. Just to hit a print and str1, put a dot after that, and you can see there is an option for capitalize, there is an option for count, decode, encode, ends with suffix, and all of that. Yes, there will be again a movie on the strings later on in the course, which will help you. Right now, notice we are printing the hello world. It capitalize the hello of it. Now there is again options for converting into all lowercase, uppercase, and I would like to convert it upper so that it's much more visible. And of course, there are third-party modules as well for the strings to get an extra functionality for the strings. Again, you might have got an idea how strings are powerful, but the movie is getting too much longer. So let's move on to the next movie, and later in some time we will again discuss back onto the strings.